My name's Marcus Reed, and I'm 44. On June 16th, 2025, while on duty in DC, my heart suddenly stopped, flatlined, for 19 minutes. I've been in the Secret Service for most of my adult life. This job? It's not something you just do. It becomes part of who you are. You start to see everything through a filter of danger, watching for exits, scanning crowds, reading faces, constantly calculating risks in the blink of an eye. That was second nature to me. I guarded some of the most powerful leaders on Earth, and I was good at it. Calm under fire, emotionally distant by design. That's the only way to survive in this line of work. My identity was tied to the badge. Then there was Clara, my wife, and our daughter Sophie. When I'd come home at night, I'd kiss them both and try to shut down that hyper-alert part of my mind, the one that never stopped watching, never stopped listening. Some nights I managed. Other nights, not so much. We weren't regular churchgoers. Maybe showed up for Christmas, Easter if things weren't too crazy. I believed in God, yeah, but kind of like you believe in gravity or the sky. It's there. You just don't think about it much. My prayers were short, mostly, Lord, keep them safe. That was it. I focused on the real-world threats I could see and maybe do something about. That Tuesday morning started off just like any other. Gray skies, a steady mist hanging in the air, and the city weighed down by it. We were moving a standard protectee, nothing unusual. I was on post, scanning my surroundings. I still remember the smell, wet asphalt mixed with exhaust fumes. There was a little girl standing on the sidewalk, holding this bright red umbrella. For a moment, she reminded me of Sophie. She's 12 now. That morning, as I was heading out, she'd called from the hallway, "Bye, Dad. Love you." Turns out, those were the last words I'd hear before everything changed. There were no warning signs, no chest pain, no dizziness. Just 1 second, I'm locking eyes with a rooftop, doing my job, and the next, everything goes dark. Not painful. It felt more like someone yanked my plug from the wall, just off. And then I was floating. That's really the only way to put it. I was still present, still aware, but not down there anymore. I hovered above the scene, watching as if I were observing someone else's emergency. But it was me. My body lay crumpled on the concrete. I saw my team rushing over. I caught the panic in their eyes even as their training kicked in and they started chest compressions. I could hear them shouting my name, but their voices sounded far off, like echoing through a tunnel. "Marcus Reed, stay with us. We need a medic." And the weirdest part? I wasn't scared. My life was all about staying calm in chaos, keeping fear in check. But now, nothing. Just peace. Deep, still peace. I watched them trying to bring me back. I saw the ambulance pull up, lights flashing across the rainy buildings, no sound reaching me. Then I felt something, gentle, subtle, not a shove, more like a hand being held out, an invitation. And I turned away from the scene, from my body, and let myself drift. That rainy street, the sirens, the noise, they all faded. It wasn't a tunnel of light, like people always say. Not for me. It was more like stepping through a soft curtain. One moment, I was in a world of dull color and noise, and the next, I was somewhere else entirely. There were no walls, no ground beneath my feet, no sky overhead, just a warmth that wrapped around me, and a light, not harsh, not blinding, but soft and alive, everywhere, all at once. It didn't just shine, it embraced. It surrounded me like a hug that went deeper than skin. And the silence? It was gone. Instead of silence, there came a sound, but not like anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't music in the way we understand music. It was more like a vibration, a single, pure chord made of love itself, resonating through everything around me. It was the sound of peace, not just in the air, but in my bones, in my soul. And in that sound, I felt something I'd never truly known before. I was completely understood. Every hidden part of me, my regrets, my failures, every dark thought I'd kept locked away, it was all exposed. Yet, there wasn't even a trace of condemnation. Only acceptance. A love so deep and unconditional, it felt like it washed straight through me, rinsing out years of armor, of stress, of emotional calluses I hadn't even realized were there. I began to cry, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my life, I felt free. It was like I had been hauling this invisible weight on my back forever, and suddenly, someone lifted it off me. The release was overwhelming. And then I saw him. He was standing right there. Trying to describe him with human words feels impossible. He wasn't made of skin and bone like we are. He was made of that same light and love that surrounded the whole place. But he had form, presence, and I knew exactly who it was. Jesus. No one had to tell me. I didn't wonder. I just knew it the same way I know my own name. That certainty, it hit deeper than anything I've ever felt. He didn't look like the paintings. His face, it shifted, not in a way that was unsettling, but in a way that felt right. Like he carried every human experience, every culture, every season of life within him. But it was his eyes that locked me in place. They weren't just eyes, they were galaxies, oceans, fire and gentleness all in one. They saw me, all of me, not just who I'd been, but who I was always meant to be. And in that gaze was a love so fierce, so intimate, it shattered everything broken inside me. Then somehow reassembled it, piece by piece, stronger and whole. He didn't move his lips to speak. His voice wasn't sound. It was a thought, direct, clear, and more real than anything I've ever heard. Marcus, welcome. I couldn't answer. I just stood there, undone. Every bit of my training, my composure, my hardened shell, it all disappeared. I was just a soul standing before its maker. Then he said something that floored me. You have been a protector, his voice filled with warmth and pride. You've stepped between others and danger. That is a noble calling. Tears poured down my face. All those years, I'd seen it as just doing my job, being sharp, being ready. But he saw past the actions. He saw the intent. I tried. I managed to think back. My words felt small, shaky, like a whisper in a cathedral. He smiled, and the light around him seemed to grow even gentler. I know. Then the space around us changed. Suddenly, he was showing me something, but I wasn't watching it like a movie. I was in it, living it. He showed me my country, America, not as a map, but as a spirit, a soul. What I saw was both beautiful and broken. A vast land, alive and full of potential, but covered in dark, swirling clouds. They weren't made of weather. They were something deeper, clouds of fear, division, anger, confusion. They churned and moved, thickening in certain areas until the light couldn't break through it all. Below, I saw people walking through this heavy spiritual fog. They shouted. They argued. But it wasn't just disagreement. It was blindness. They couldn't see each other clearly anymore. And underneath all the noise, they were scared. This is the battle you never saw, he said, and his voice now carried a heavy sorrow. This is the real war. It's not about bullets or bills. It's fought deep within the hearts and minds of my people. I kept watching. The dark clouds sent down little sparks, tiny flickers of rage, and folks down below would grab hold of them. They'd throw them back at each other like weapons. A nasty comment on social media, a biased headline, a heated political debate. Each moment added another layer to the storm, making the sky darker and thicker with every exchange. It made my stomach turn. I'd lived in that world. I'd breathed that air, and I never even realized I was part of it. What's happening? I asked him, trying to understand. Why is it so dark? The enemy of your soul, Jesus said, his voice calm but full of warning, wants to tear apart what I've brought together. He floods the earth with lies, and too many are drowning in them. Pride and politics, he wields them like blades, turning brothers into enemies. Then he pointed. Look closer. So I did. And through the gloom, I began to notice something. Tiny points of light blinking on here and there. At first, they were few and far between, like the first stars in a twilight sky. But then more appeared. I saw a grandmother praying alone in her Kansas bedroom. A group of men gathered in a Florida church basement, hands clasped, heads bowed. A mother whispering a prayer behind the steering wheel in California. A farmer, dirt on his boots, praying as he rode his tractor across an open field in Iowa. Each prayer became a little flame, barely visible but full of purpose. And I saw what they did. Every time someone prayed, a narrow shaft of light shot upward, like a thread of hope piercing straight through the darkness. Where that light broke through, heaven's glow spilled out, not a spotlight, but a small, focused beam. But it was enough. I watched people standing in those beams stop mid-argument, their faces shifting. They blinked like they were waking from some kind of fog. Their rage faded, replaced by confusion, and then a trace of clarity. This, Jesus said, his voice low but filled with undeniable power. This is the only thing that breaks through. I just stood there, stunned. All my life, I'd trusted physical protection, armor, weapons, cameras, strategy. But now I was seeing it plain. The real power, the real defense, comes from surrender, from someone kneeling in prayer, whispering truth into the chaos. Then, the vision shifted, and I saw Donald Trump, but not the way I'd seen him on the news or in the circles I worked. He wasn't standing on a stage or giving a speech. He was just a figure in the middle of the spiritual battlefield. The dark clouds around him boiled with intensity, full of noise and unrest. But something else was there too, unexpected and honestly confusing. All around him, those little lights I'd seen earlier, the prayers, were gathering. They formed a kind of spiritual barrier, a protective shield. I felt unsettled. I had my own thoughts about the man, shaped by years of proximity to that world. I wasn't sure what to make of it. I don't understand, I said to Jesus. A lot of people don't see him as godly. Jesus looked at me, and his gaze cut straight through all my assumptions and the political buzz I'd absorbed over the years. You've been trained to evaluate the man, he said. But I see the tool. He is not your savior. He's not your pastor. He is a bull in a china shop. The vision shifted again. I found myself in a grand, ancient room, its stone walls dark and heavy, covered in thick webs. But these weren't ordinary cobwebs. They were spun from corruption, lies, hidden deals, and generations of decay, clinging to the very structure of the nation. Shadowy figures moved silently in the corners, tending those webs, reinforcing them. They recoiled at the slightest trace of light. Then the doors at the far end of the room burst open, and in came Donald Trump. Loud, blunt, disruptive. He moved through the space like a wrecking ball, not out of holiness, but because that's just who he is. He knocked over furniture, shoved aside shadows, and unintentionally ripped down webs that had taken centuries to weave. The figures shrieked and fled, exposed. For generations, Jesus said, the enemy has hidden strongholds in plain sight: pride, greed, and dark covenants. My people have prayed for revival, expecting gentle rain. Instead, I sent a storm. This man's pride, his greatest flaw, is the very tool I use to tear open what's been hidden. He looked into me again. I didn't send him as a model of godliness. I sent him to stir the waters. His presence reveals hearts, both ally and enemy. The fury directed at him is not just about politics. It's about what's being uncovered. And the enemy is enraged because the darkness is no longer safe. And suddenly, it made sense. It was never really about the man. It was about what God was doing through him, shaking a corrupt system, waking people up. God wasn't endorsing every word or action. He was using him as a key to break open sealed doors. Your nation stands at a crossroads. Jesus continued as the vision began to fade. The enemy wants civil war, hearts hardened by division. But I'm calling for a great awakening. And it won't come through government. It'll come when my people stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other on their knees. The peace of that place, the love, the clarity, it was everything I never knew I needed. The world I'd left behind, its noise, its division, felt like a fading memory. Please, I whispered, barely able to speak. Let me stay? I don't want to go back. But the look Jesus gave me, it wasn't rejection. It was mission. Marcus, he said softly, your work isn't done. You spent your life guarding one man's body. Now, it's time to tell the world what guards a nation's soul. You've seen the truth. Now go and share it. But I'm just a federal agent, I said quietly. Why would anyone listen to me? You have a story, Jesus replied. That's all I ask. Share what you've seen. Tell them not to trust in leaders or governments, but in me. Teach them to pray, not in anger, but with hope for their nation. The wall has cracked. Now is the moment for my people to shine. He touched my shoulder. It wasn't flesh. It was pure love, like electricity made of light. I felt it surge through me. A charge. A calling. It's not your time, he said. You have to go back. That same gentle pull returned. Only now it was pulling me away from him. No, please. But the light faded. The sound, the warmth, it all slipped away. And just before it vanished, I heard his voice one last time. I am with you. Then, fire. My chest exploded in pain. Then cold, rain soaking through my clothes. Then noise, shouting, sirens. He's back. Get him on the gurney. I opened my eyes to flashing ambulance lights and a paramedic's shocked face. Everything hurt. I tried to speak, but couldn't. And then it all came rushing back. The vision, the light, Jesus. I broke down sobbing, not from pain, but because I had just left heaven. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The doctors had no answers. You were gone for 19 minutes, one of them said. No brain damage. No explanation. Frankly, you're a medical mystery. But I knew what had happened. And one afternoon, Clara looked at me and said, "You're different." I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her everything. Now I'm here. I don't wear a badge anymore. My assignment changed. Jesus sent me back to tell you what I saw. He wants you to know the battle for America's soul is absolutely real, and it's not unfolding on your television screen or across the internet. What I saw was a spiritual war, invisible to most, but incredibly real. With my own eyes, I witnessed how God is working through an imperfect man, a disruptor, someone many wouldn't choose, to pull down spiritual strongholds that have stood firm for generations. It's not about liking him or agreeing with his personality or politics. It's about recognizing a divine purpose at work. There's a spiritual strategy behind it. God is shaking the very foundations of what we depend on so that we'll stop placing our hope in unstable things and finally place our full trust in him alone. God sent me back with a message for you and for anyone who will hear it. Stop battling your neighbors. Stop pouring your anger on people you've never met just because they hold a different political opinion. You're directing your energy at the wrong enemy. Instead, pray. When you feel that frustration building because of something you've just heard in the news, turn it off and go pray. When you notice division and hostility swirling around you, get down on your knees and ask for God's love to shine through the darkness. I saw it with my own eyes. Prayer isn't just a ritual or a habit, it's a weapon. Each prayer becomes a light that cuts straight through the darkness. It's stronger than legislation, more powerful than elections, greater than any military on earth. Jesus is real, heaven is real, and God's hand is still on this nation. His plan may not match our expectations, and it may come through people we don't fully understand, but it is flawless because it's his. We don't need to have all the answers. We're not supposed to figure it all out. Our role is simple. We pray. For most of my life, I was trained to stop bullets, to stand in front of danger and protect others. But what Jesus showed me is this. Prayer has the power to stop wars that can't be seen with human eyes. Don't waste another moment fighting the wrong battles. Join the real one. We're not called to figure everything out. We're called to pray. I spent my life preparing to take a bullet, but what Jesus revealed to me is this. Prayer can stop wars that no human eye can see. Don't spend another moment fighting the wrong enemy. Step into the real fight. I'd trained my whole career to protect lives, but in that moment with Jesus, I saw that prayer is the true protection. It's a spiritual armor no enemy can break through. It's the invisible weapon that moves nations and shatters chains that no government ever could. When I stood before him, everything made sense. The arguments, the politics, the bitterness we battle here, they're just echoes of a greater war raging beyond what we see. And every prayer, no matter how small or simple, was like a blade of light cutting through layers of darkness. I saw it, literally saw it. When someone prayed in faith, heaven responded. Darkness trembled. Demons backed away. Strongholds began to fall. A grandmother kneeling in her bedroom. A child whispering a bedtime prayer. A farmer praying while working the land. Those moments weren't small. They were explosions of light punching through spiritual clouds full of fear, hate, and confusion. That's why Jesus sent me back, not to argue or convince through clever words, but to testify, to share what I saw, to tell you that your prayers matter more than you realize. Heaven is listening. God is nearer than your next breath. Even now, I can feel his hand resting on my shoulder, the intensity of his love still etched in my soul. He didn't give me a weapon. He didn't give me a title. He gave me a story, and that story is now my torch, because this world needs light more than ever. Leaving his presence was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. But if this message causes even one person to choose love over hate, forgiveness over anger, then every second of that pain was worth it. Because I know what's really at stake. I saw the spiritual storm. I saw the rage and the schemes designed to tear us apart. But I also saw the power of one faithful prayer breaking through like a beam of light. And now, it's in your hands. You might feel like your voice is too small, too quiet to matter. But the moment you lift it in prayer, it becomes a weapon of power in the hands of Almighty God. Don't stay silent. Don't let fear, bitterness, or exhaustion steal your voice. Use it. Pray, pray. Pray like your child's future depends on it. Pray like your marriage, your health, your city, your country depend on it. Because they do. Pray like heaven is listening, because it is. Pray like hell is trembling, because it does. This is no longer optional. This is survival. What I'm sharing with you is more than a story. It's an invitation. A holy alarm clock shaking us awake in the middle of a deep sleep. A message from the other side for anyone who still wonders. Is heaven real? Is God paying attention? Does my life matter? Yes. He sees you. He sees you when you're holding back tears in a crowded room. He sees you smiling for others while carrying silent fears. He knows about the questions that haunt you in the middle of the night, the ones you've never dared to say out loud. He knows the weight on your shoulders. And he hears the prayers you whisper in the dark when you think no one's listening. They're not bouncing off the ceiling. They're rising. Each one of them. Every prayer, no matter how broken or brief, becomes light. And that light travels. It penetrates the darkness. It pushes it back. That's what I saw. That's what he showed me. That's why he sent me back. To tell you this. Your prayers matter more than you could ever imagine. Yes, the world will shake. Yes, things will fall apart. Yes, there will be fear and confusion. But it is not the end. It is the mercy of God, shaking false hopes and weak foundations to bring us back to what never shifts. We put our faith in politics, in power, in our money, our opinions, our pride. But none of it will hold. There's only one place that's steady when the storm hits. Him, Jesus. The rock, the cornerstone, the steady ground beneath crumbling nations. So I beg you, stop wasting your voice on outrage. Stop wasting your strength on division. Stop fighting people who are not your enemy. This is not a war of flesh and blood. It's a war you can't see with your eyes. And your greatest weapon is prayer. Heaven is not far off. Jesus is not distant. He is alive, and he is coming, not to destroy, but to heal, to awaken, to rescue hearts that have been asleep for too long. I used to think protection meant a weapon, a wall, a plan. I spent years guarding human lives. Now I know the greatest protection is prayer. Real protection comes through surrender, not control. It flows through love, not fear. So here's what I leave you with. Don't waste another second fighting battles that lead nowhere. Bend your knees. Open your mouth. Lift your voice. Pray like the world depends on it. Because when the lights go out, when the ground trembles, when every headline fades and every human solution fails, one thing will remain. Love, and he is love.